Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to let our guest, Miss Abby Goldsmith, introduce herself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hello. I write science fiction. I've got this big epic Torth series. It's about 1 million words. And it starts with the book Majority.
Okay. So how did you find your way into the writing space? Were you always a lifelong nerd? You got, a book dropped on your head and you said, I'll fill the pages. Like, how did this happen for you?
Yeah, no, I've always been a lifelong nerd, a lifelong reader. When I was a child, I think I started out reading the Oz books by L. Frank Baum, like at age 6.
Nice.
So it goes all the way back to that. And then, of course, as I grew up, reading lots of Stephen King, got into Robert Jordan and so forth. And yeah.
Well, Oz books were one of the ones that got me reading because I heard obviously the movie was out way before either one of us was born. And obviously there's the conspiracy about like people died in the background on the set. So you kind of watch it religiously to see if you could figure it out. And then you're reading the books like, well, maybe that's not really what happened. Maybe it's in the plot and we just missed it. So I started reading the books. And that's where at a young age, I realized the page to screen conversion sometimes leaves something to be desired.
Yeah. Well, do you remember that 1980s Jim Henson Return to Oz movie?
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
Yeah, it was very dark and weird, very weird. I think it gave a lot of kids nightmares, but I loved it.
I watched war movies growing up. Like, I come from a military family, so Rambo was my first babysitter. So no judgment here.
Yeah.
What is it about Oz that kind of drew you in? Was there anything in particular?
I think probably the world building, the wacky creativity going on there. Like I kind of do the same thing with my series. I like non-standard, like I don't like very derivative trope laden stuff. I like more original kind of unique stuff. So, Oz is chock full of, there's all kinds of weird stuff. There's flying monkeys. There's, a fake wizard and so forth. So. Yeah.
Okay. The man behind the curtain has become so many memes on so many other platforms. All right, so before we get too deep into this interview, we do have to do the religion questions because we are the Blasters and Blades podcast, and it's sort of required at this point. So, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
I want to say all of the above for different reasons.
Answer. Which one did you find first?
Star Trek would have to be the first, because I was watching that even as like a small kid.
If you were watching that as a small kid, were you watching the reruns of the original one, or did you watch the Next Generation?
Next Generation. Yeah, I started with Next Generation for sure. Yep.
Okay. I just know Nick at Night played I think it was Nick at Night that did the reruns of the original one for a while. So I actually found the original first, but only because it was in syndicate somewhere. Okay. So are there any other sci-fi properties that really speak to you besides the obvious big three?
I really thought the TV show The Expanse was great. I could go on like probably just about everything. What do I not like? The Matrix, Jurassic Park, like all the big properties from when I was growing up in the 1990s and then the early 2000s. Yeah.
So did you watch all of the Jurassic Parks or just the original?
Probably all of them, but the original was what got me.
Okay. Did you ever get to the books?
Yeah, I read the books first. Back when I was like 12. Yeah.
I found the movie and it was so captivating that I had to go read the books. And then as I'm reading the books, I'm like, this is so much cooler. But I will admit that soundtrack was so iconic that as I read the book, I could hear it in the background.
Yeah. Like I actually have done a workshop on compelling characters, and I use Jurassic Park as one like example of like 1980s movies with like strong reactions of side characters where there's like a kid going things like that, and I thought it that it was like very iconic 1980s, 1990s epic kind of movie making, which I wish people would still do today.
Jurassic Park had the famous "you spent so long worrying about whether you could, you forgot to ask whether you should." Best sidekick ever, or a secondary character. I don't know if it's fair to call him a sidekick, but absolutely. Now, when you say you do these panels, are you going to a lot of the cons, or?
I've been going to more cons. I've been ramping it up this last year and this year because my series just came out. The first one was published in 2023, and the last one's coming out in May.
That's really quick. Did you? How deep into the series were you when you started publishing it?
I had already written it.
You read the whole series?
Yeah, I did. So I serialized it online on Royal Road, and so got an audience there, and yeah.
So you had any problems with Royal Road? I know some publishers won't touch products that were there first because there's issues with copyright, and they are not author friendly when it comes to helping you defend your copyright if people steal your material. Did you experience any problems with that?
No, not at all. But I mean, there's there's the big 5 publishers and there's the rest. So the big 5 publishers are the ones that'll have a problem with that, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I know some of the smaller presses I've dealt with haven't, but I mean, it's a valid concern if stuff's getting stolen. Now, did your audience that you found on Royal Road follow you over? I know people have tried that on Wattpad and found limited success because most of the Wattpad readers were like underage, so no credit cards.
Right. Yeah, no, honestly, I was hoping for more people to follow me over, but it didn't really work out that way.
Oh, you got some free beta readers in the beginning, so you take what you can get.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get back to that book, because I am interested, and your covers were very compelling, but because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
The Wheel of Time and Game of Thrones, but mostly Wheel of Time.
Okay, are you coming at it from the books this time, or from?
Oh yeah, the books. Sorry, the show should not exist in my opinion.
I mean, if you can separate that the film version, the stage version, and the book version, or an even graphic novel, if you can accept that they're all separate properties that just have vague similarities, you can accept it. That's how I watched Starship Trooper the movie and love it.
I can accept that, but I think that even if, even just taken as on its own, it's not a good show. I mean, it looks low budget. It's just not well written. So.
You didn't think Game of Thrones was well written?
Oh no, Game of Thrones was. I'm talking about Wheel of Time. Sorry.
Oh, Wheel of Time. Yeah, although I will say that when it comes to fantasy movies, after the original movies of the Lord of the Rings that they did was at the early 2000s, the production value on costuming was so amazing that everything after that, if you don't keep that level, you just look like a high school production. And I agree with you on Wheel of Time. It felt like high school production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Game of Thrones, I think a lot of people would agree season 8 jumped the shark a lot.
But we did learn that they have Starbucks in Westeros.
Right.
And bottled water. I don't know what company was bottling the water, but they have bottled water. So good to know in a crisis. Those kinds of things, I imagine if they ever do a box set of the DVDs, they're going to somehow edit that out, the coffee cup in the one scene and bottle of water in the other. But the fact that they exist just amuse me somehow. It's like the errant misspelling or the extra comma that it's been through 9 rounds of editing and somehow is still there. You just got to admire the dedication on that point.
Yeah.
So I don't get as offended. I know some people are like, "Oh my God, you broke my immersion." I'm like, just have fun.
Oh my gosh. I mean, to me, there were so many problems with that last season. The Starbucks cup was the least of it. I mean, that was just oh, haha.
Fair.
Icing on the cake there, yeah.
So when you like your fantasy, do you tend to prefer the hopeful stuff? Is grimdark your jam? Do you have a preference?
Well, to be honest, grimdark has always been my jam, but I'm trying to shift my entire worldview, trying to go more hopeful.
So do you like Joey Abercrombie then? He's pretty big on the grimdark side of the house. I've read some of his stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I haven't read all of his stuff. I only read his one big trilogy, The First Law.
Yeah, my problem was that I ended up not liking any of the characters, good guys or bad guys, so it's kind of hard to root for them. But the dude's got skills when it comes to the prose, the word choice and the way he crafts the sentence. It's just the content wasn't really for me, but I know some people loved it to death. So
Yeah, well, the first couple books I thought they didn't even come across grim dark to me. They came across as pretty hopeful and fun, but the way it ended, that's what makes it grim dark.
I don't know. The Nine Fingers, what was the character? Nine Fingers, something Nine Fingers, with the Joe Abercrombie one. Like I found he was supposed to be the antagonist or the protagonist, excuse me, and I just didn't like him, and that made it really hard for me to get into. I read the first two novels, and I couldn't keep going.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, like Glokta was really the one that I think people were rooting for, including me. But even he wasn't all that. Like I think he was still a little hard to like.
Yeah, but I mean, given what he endured, you kind of have to respect the moxie, I guess, at a certain point in time, because you could choose to stand up in the against the tides of fate and your injuries and whatnot, or you can let it roll you over. And I do always admire characters that'll stand in spite of. And so in that respect, yes, but some of the decisions the character made were just like, eh.
I agree. Yeah. Well, this is why I haven't really read more Joe Abercrombie. I mean, there's a lot of authors out there, and I'm a fan of a number of others, like Michael G. Manning. His Art of the Adept series I thought was
Okay.
standout. I could go on and on. Lots of authors that come from Royal Road I think are pretty good. There's a number that I'm a big fan of. So
I haven't made it over Royal Road. I have limited reading time, and mostly since I want to get my own words, I do my reading through my ears, and so something like a Royal Road just doesn't work for that.
No. So, same here. I'm talking about those that have done like me.
Oh, you mean the authors that crossed over from?
Right.
Well, a lot of authors started from, either fanfic or like Wattpad, Royal Road. There's another one like it. I can't remember its name anymore.
Oh yeah, there's tons. There's a ton.
Yeah, but I mean, like I know some people that even got paid to write for them. They were, paid by the word. Very Charles Dickensy. But I don't know. Like I said, I do audiobooks, so it's not really my cup of tea. But you can't beat the price. Free is good.
Yes.
So
yeah. And I'm an audiobook fan, and my publisher is Podium, which is an audiobook publisher. So, yeah.
Podium's good stuff. They cost me a lot of money though.
Yeah.
When they first signed my first series, they gave me an author, Richard Fox's book to prove they can work with veterans with military content. And I'm like, cool. And I listened to it. And then I didn't realize that sometimes if you ask authors as an author, they'll give you a copy to review. So you'll like spread the word for them. So I went and bought his entire catalog, and it cost me a lot of money. So yeah. I did reach out and tell them not to spend it all in one place.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, Podium puts good stuff out. I've worked with them before, and they have some really top-notch narrators. Although they've recently rebranded what it used to be Podium Audiobooks, and now it's Podium Entertainment, I think.
Yep.
Because they're diversifying what kind of content they do, which is cool. I mean, like more power to them. So
yeah, they're a rapidly expanding company apparently. So yeah, absolutely.
So did you find them, or did they find your book and be like totally digging this and go from there? How did you get with them?
They did. They made me an offer. Yeah, my series hit the top page of on Royal Road. There's like a front page, so it was right up there, and that's when they made me an offer. Yeah. Were
you already at that point in time planning on bringing it over to traditional sales like Barnes and Nobles and all that?
I was planning to self-publish. I was kind of like, all right, this is the last stop before I self-publish. So yeah.
I guess. Well, no, you can self-publish to Barnes and Noble. You can go on their digital if you use the right people. All right. So before your book sounds interesting, so I keep sidetracking, and I apologize. So because we are the Blasters of Blades, we do have two more religion questions. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. So we are bringing this back for science. What is your favorite dinosaur?
I'm gonna go with the Archaeopteryx.
I don't think I've ever heard of that one before.
The bird dinosaur crossover. Yeah. So I should say it's Darkaday because I've got kind of one of those in my series. But yeah, it's a kind of like a pterosaur. So yeah, the Darkaday was like the biggest pterosaur. They were like the size of a light plane. And the Archaeopteryx was a feathered. It had teeth, but it looked a little bit like a bird.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it, so I'm gonna have to do some research when we get done with this episode. I spelled it so badly. Word was like, "What the heck, Jr. What the heck?" But it is enough that I can find it later. So that's all I need. All right, and because we are the Blasters and Blades, we here at this podcast are civilized human beings. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Oh my gosh, all of the above. I take it black, and I have I guess I like sweet and spicy chai tea. I'll go with a latte sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any flavors when you mix it up for like the lattes and stuff? Do you have a preferred flavor?
I guess not really. I mean, I might add honey or something like that. Yeah.
For me, I'm pretty basic white dude, and I'll drink my pumpkin spice in October. But the rest of the year, it's either straight mocha or French vanilla. There's something about the French vanilla flavor I just dig.
I like those too. Yeah.
So, which is French vanilla is what I think hazelnut and vanilla mixed together is how you get that combination. Which is weird because hazelnut by itself, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. So, do you tend to make your own coffee, or are you going out and getting the gourmet stuff?
It's usually going out and getting the gourmet stuff, but tea, yeah, I make my own.
Do you prefer it in the bags, or do you do loose leaf?
I'll do both. Whatever I'm in the mood for, yeah.
When I was in grad school, the coffee shop I worked at was right next to a Tea Havana. They used to be around. They were like the tea equivalent to Starbucks, and they got me hooked on the loose leaf stuff and how much like better the flavor palette is. I was surprised how much of a difference that makes when they do that, as opposed to like the bags where they press it all and whatever they do to preserve that. So
that and also, I mean, it really depends on what brand of tea and what kind of tea. And I've really found like I'm picky about the tea. Yeah.
Well, now you're seeing more because people realized that there was a difference with the loose leaf versus the Lipton's tea bag. So now you're getting companies that will do it bagged, but it's like a mesh bag. So you get the equivalent of the loose leaf tea without having to strain it out or do something like that. So I think that's a pretty decent compromise. I'll mix it up on occasion. Do you do anything fancy with your straight tea, or you like add milk, sugar, or anything like that?
Yeah, I will add milk sometimes. I will add honey sometimes. I'll add a cinnamon stick sometimes. I like that. Or star anise. I know, all these different options.
What is star anise? I'm not sure I've heard of that.
It looks like a little star, like a big kind of seed pod, and they'll sell it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a star. It tastes like licorice.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Using the cinnamon stick, and cinnamon's a very like wintry flavor for me, so I could definitely see stirring it with that. And I'm gonna have to see if I can do that with coffee. Cinnamon coffee could work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
Now, do you crush it up into a powder and then sprinkle the powder on, or do you just stir it with a straight stick?
Straight stick. I'll just put it in there.
Nice. Yep. I know when I was going to grad school in Philly, we had steam air, which I'm not, in the South, we don't tend to have that. And so it dries you out. So we would always have like a pot of water sitting on it to moisturize the air. And that was one of the landlord's tricks. He's like, throw a couple of sticks of cinnamon in it and your house will always smell good.
Mm.
And so
yeah.
It was a nice change. And then since you had them around, you started thinking, I wonder what I could do else with this, right? And so I started experimenting with cinnamon that year. So, okay. So do you have you write sci-fi? Is that your preference generally speaking, or, are you all over the place when it comes to reading?
Yeah. Oh yeah. For reading, I read everything. I mean, I read a lot of nonfiction. I read history. I read, social political commentary, modern day. I'll read memoirs, but I mostly read sci-fi, fantasy, pretty much. Yeah.
I think the younger generation are missing out because everything is so niche. So like you can go online and drill it down to, like redheaded firefighters in Alaska, and you'll find like dozens of books on it. Whereas when I was a kid, like we didn't have the digital stuff. You went to a library, you found a proper like paper book. And once you went through your small library's collection, you either hoped they had some sort of interlibrary loan or you expanded outward. So I've read pretty broadly, even though my preference would be like the sci-fi or the fantasy. I don't think modern readers get that as much. I think they stay more in their niche.
Yeah.
for good or bad. I mean, obviously from a marketing perspective, as someone producing that niche could be good for us, but there's a benefit to being well-rounded, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I get bored if I just read one genre for like the entire year.
Now, you said you read a lot. Well, you read through your ears a lot with audiobooks. Do you prefer the straight narration, the dual cast, I forget what they call it when they do it, almost like it's a stage radio production?
Oh yeah, graphic audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that actually. I used to try it out a lot, and I just find it always seems too melodramatic for me.
That's fair. I tend to like it where it's not like just straight robotic, but it's, like a friend sitting here telling you a story, does the voices, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But when they do the music in the background, that just gets annoying.
Yeah, exactly. Like the music and sound effects to me, like they usually seem too cheesy. They turn me off. Yeah.
Or they're not balanced properly to the audio, so you like end up not being able to hear whatever that section was.
Yes,
I've noticed that as well. Now, I wouldn't mind, and I had one author I found who did this, and I only heard this version because I was on his Patreon for a while. But a lot of problems with audio. One of the reasons I do headers between each section is so that way when audio, if you're listening, you get that cue, like, oh, we're switching POVs, because you don't always get that in audio if they just use like an asterisk or something centered in the page. I saw one author when he switched POVs on the audiobook, he did like a ding or some sort of audio indicator that they were switching. That I didn't mind.
Yeah. Or you get a really talented narrator. Like, have you read Dungeon Crawler Carl?
I have had so many people recommend it. It is on my list when I get some money to buy a bunch of credits.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's got like how many? I think he's like 6 or 7 books out already. Something crazy.
Yeah, the 7th one is coming out in audio, I think, next month or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that audiobook narrator is super crazy talented.
I wonder who narrated that. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's Jeff Hayes. I actually met him, and it's so funny because like he doesn't look like the voices he does at all. So a lot of people are like, "You're Jeff Hayes." He always gets that reaction.
Oh, we've had him on the show. I know that he does sound booth audio. Okay,
right, yeah,
yeah. He's an interesting cat. He's got his production on the back end like a well-oiled machine.
Totally, yeah, yeah.
I do wonder if he's part cyborg. Because I don't know if he sleeps. I'm in his Discord, so I get pings when he goes live to do recordings. And I'm looking at him like, it's 4:00 in the morning, Jeff. Go to sleep. I had to mute his channel. I like listening sometimes when I'm like washing dishes or whatever, hearing him do the raw. But, oh my God, that guy needs to sleep some. Unless, of course, he's using our code over there at Coffee Brand Coffee. Podcast Grunts gets 10% off. If he uses our code to buy the coffee to stay awake, I'm totally okay with it because I'll shamelessly shill for the man. Okay, so you prefer your ears. Do you like it when they do the like some books will have male female characters and they'll have a male female narrator to sort of mix it up. The gender of the primary is the normal narrator, and then for all the other gendered voices, they have this sort of stand-in. Does that bother you, or do you like it? I found I've been enjoying that lately.
I don't mind it. I actually really do like just one narrator doing all the voices if they're super talented, like someone like Jeff Hayes or Andrea Parsnow is another one. She does The Wandering Inn. But yeah, she's incredibly talented. So those are great because you can definitely tell who's talking, male or female. Right. They do both. Yeah, but if it's someone with a narrower range, I'd rather have it be a male and a female narrator for those kind of point of views. Yep.
Yeah, although sometimes when the scenes get weird, and it might not even be anything inappropriate, but it can sound that way on audio. I'm like, God, I hope nobody heard what that was because they would not know what was going on. Because sometimes when the ladies come in and they're like, I had this happen. I was stopped at a red light and I had my windows down and it was a fight scene, but it sounded like she was screaming for other reasons because she was supposed to have been stabbed. And everyone just sort of looks over at me and I'm like, hi.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I'll listen to audiobooks in my car too. And I'm like, oh, I will turn the volume down when I am at a stoplight.
Yeah. Or the other question is this one okay to listen with the kids in the car?
Yeah.
So, all right. So before we dive into your books, I'm going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly show for the man. And then we're going to dive right in because I've had a hard time staying away from your books because I'm curious. So we're going to air that commercial.
Humanity will be free. no matter the cost. Deep in the Guatemalan jungle, buried beneath a forgotten Mayan pyramid, an earth-shattering secret sits, waiting. Its discovery will rip apart the illusion that humanity is alone in the universe. Engaged in a life-and-death struggle for the future of mankind, Harry Rogers and Jess Cook are forced to protect this secret from the most despicable foes imaginable. They must race across the globe to complete Liberty Station, the first true interplanetary ship. Only then can they search for the shocking truth behind what they found. They have no room for error, because failure means death for them and subjugation for everyone else. Presenting Liberty Station, Book 1 of Humanity Unlimited, written by Terry Mixon. Purchase your copy on Amazon and learn more about the author and his works at terrymixon.com.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. Veronica Jaguar, who's the one who narrated that for Terry Mixon, is one of my favorite female narrators. I would probably listen to her when she does her weird voices, read me the notebook or like the phone book, because I've listened to hundreds of hours of her on her the stuff she did for Terry's Sci-Fi. Highly talented. If you're interested in audiobooks, people, and you just want to listen to a good voice, Voices by V. Check her website out. She links to everything she's ever narrated. So, all right. So first off, where did the genesis, and while you answer, I'll pull the cover up. Where did the base premise for this universe come from?
I mean, honestly, probably an amalgamation of a ton of sci-fi and fantasy. If I was going to compare it to something, I mean, you could compare it to the Dune universe. You could compare it to Werner Vinge, A Fire Upon the Deep kind of universe. It's a very large scale galactic empire kind of story. So there's a lot of aliens, and I've spent more than a decade world building on this one. So it's very in-depth.
Okay, so when you said you spent a decade world building and now the series is wrapping up, is it a sad moment for you closing this chapter?
It definitely felt like it. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is like a major chapter of my life ending. Yeah.
Did you think when you started that it would take you, 10 years of your life and hundreds of thousands of words?
No, I think a lot of authors kind of underestimate, like you've always heard Robert Jordan say, oh, the Wheel of Time, it'll be 3 books, no more than that. The story grows in the telling. So I thought mine would be 3 books, and I thought I'd be done with it in like a couple years. So that was wrong.
Okay. No, absolutely. I really enjoy the cover. So before we start talking about the art, for those listening, because we do have some families that listen to the show together, and sometimes they will pick books to read as a family. If somebody was thinking about reading this book and they wanted to know if it was okay with their kids, if you use the movie theater rating system, because people are just familiar with that, G to R, I guess, like what would you rate these books? Really,
I'd say PG. The final book does have some fade to black sex, but very fade to black. So, you could go with PG-13 for that. There's nothing graphic. There's no swearing. So there is some self-harm. That's about it.
Okay. So we're going through all the art, but your covers definitely stick out. They're a little bit dark, but not so dark that you can't have the image pop. So what is the story of this art, and like how did you come to decide to use this as the image?
Honestly, that was Podium. Jeff Brown is the artist. It is a grimdark series. It doesn't have a dark ending. It ends on a okay, it's a happy note. Things are okay in the end. But it's a heavy series, like sort of like Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, like something like that. It's there is a lot of war, there's some torture. There's no easy wins. So there's a lot of slavery. The main theme is honestly fighting against mental slavery. So there's a lot of psychological dark stuff going on.
So if Podium helped you find the art, are they your publisher?
They are.
Okay, so they're the audiobook publisher and the ebook publisher?
Yep, and print, yep.
Cool. I mean, that them doing the whole shebang is relatively new for them. I didn't realize that. Now I know why they rebranded. Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. No, they've been doing that for 2 or 3 years now. So yeah.
Cool. And then this is the second cover. We're just going through them. Is there obviously, they did the cover, but is there a reason you picked the images that you chose? This one obviously looks like a world in decline, some sort of post-apocalyptic vibe going on.
Yeah, I did have a lot of input into the covers, which was awesome. And yep, that's a scene from book 2. They end up in a kind of post-apocalyptic world, the Torth home world. It's been, it's kind of in a nuclear winter situation, and it's got a lot of decayed urban craziness going on. The main characters end up being chased, crash land there, and they are. They spend a lot of the time being hunted, pursued, and finding an underground religious movement. So I don't want to give any spoilers.
No, absolutely. We want them to read it for themselves. I dig the dragon thing going on, or dinosaur. I'm not sure what you're going for, but either way, it looks badass.
Yeah, that is a kind of like monstrous as dark a day based on the dinosaur. But yeah, so there's a shape-shifting goddess going on there. She takes
nice. Okay. And then spaceship ass, you can't lose with that. Although people are diversifying now. Sometimes you see a side profile of a spaceship or the front, but for a while that was spaceship thrusters was king. And I really do enjoy the imagery.
Yeah, exactly. And this is another one, colony starship characters. My series blends sci-fi fantasy, so my characters have kind of like bioengineered superpowers, some of them.
Cool.
Yeah, so those two main characters there, Ariok is a Titan, he's got superpowers. And Thomas, the kid, is a super genius telepath. So with those powers, it's like he's lived a million years, basically. So he's not allowed to cure his fatal disease, and that's part of the thing that he's rebelling against.
Okay. And then we've got, I'm not sure what's going on with this one. It looks like zero gravity situation, or because I don't see jump jets, but the background is stunning with that planet and the spires.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's Ariok again. He's got powers. He can fly. He's kind of like Superman level power, so he can do a lot of things. That's Thomas in a hover chair. That's a horde of zombified Torth. So zombification is mental slavery. They completely what Thomas is doing is he's completely taking control of a horde of minds, and he's controlling them, puppeteering them. So yep.
That's a new take on zombies that I haven't seen before. So did you go with the whole insatiable hunger to eat the living kind of thing, or is this more just meat puppets vibe?
They're meat puppets. They don't need to eat people, but it is pretty gruesome because basically like they need explicit instructions to live unless you've got a super genius controlling you.
I really like this one. This one pops. It's very vibrant.
Yeah, I'm really glad that that's how I wanted that for the ending, because the ending is an epic ending. So and yes, there is a Death Architect trying to destroy the universe. So yeah, that's the Death Architect is using wormholes plus super condensed matter to start an end of universe, heat death of the universe type of chain reaction.
So I like the characters. It almost looks like you got some sort of angel vibe going on. Is this lady missing a leg? Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, she's missing a leg. Don't want to give a spoiler, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like the covers. They're obviously the first 5 books are out. The 6th book is coming out when? Because it's pre-order now. I just want to.
Yeah, it's coming out in May 13th.
All right, so this will air at the end of February, so it'll be about 2 weeks after this airs, dear listener. You should be able to get book 6. Obviously, you've got the novels for people that get hooked and they read through the 5 novels and they're anxious for 2 weeks to get. Are there any in-universe short stories that are floating around in anthologies or whatever that people could go to as well?
I wish I probably should do that. I have some short stories out. I've had one in Escape Pod, and There's a few others just in random anthologies, but they're not related to the Torth universe. They're sci-fi.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not yet. So this universe, obviously the Torth series is ending at book 6. Is that the end of the universe, or do you think maybe you'll come back to it?
I'd like to come back to it someday. I have a great idea for a prequel series and a sequel series. So, yeah, there's plenty more to mine there, but this particular series, this was a good ending for it. Yeah.
Now, when you say prequel, one of the reasons prequels don't do as well and people get finicky about them is because if you know it's the same main characters and it's a prequel, there's not as much stakes, right? You know they don't die.
Yeah.
Other people have taken the prequel to be a universe prequel that maybe, set up the great battle that was mentioned kind of thing, in which case it's whole new characters, just events that were previously discussed. Which way do you think you would go?
Oh, it would definitely be the latter. It's a universe. It would take place 24,000 years before this one. So none of the main characters. It would be a whole new, different cast. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had aliens in this universe. How did you let yourself be inspired? Did you use actual existing creatures that we have known have existed on Earth? Did you try to make something up completely from scratch?
For animals, I do kind of use different things on Earth. For the sapients, I like to be a little more creative with those. So they're kind of an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different things. The Ummans, they look like kind of flightless, mummified birds without wings. And they're a little bit short. The Nusians are about 1 ton. They've got like rhinoceros hide kind of skin and a lot of spikes. And so those are kind of the 2 main species that keep showing up, and there's a few others. The Torth themselves are human related, so they do look like humans. They are related to us. However, they've been bioengineered to be telepathic, and they have no mercy. They've kind of got a groupthink hive mind situation going on. So they're kind of like the Borg.
So is this a post-Earth universe, or is Earth still around and this is just, a distant galaxy?
No, this is actually same universe, same galaxy as us. Earth is right here. The Torth have kept Earth as a kind of nature preserve. It's like a gorilla preserve, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So it's probably then, I would assume it's safe to say this is like a distant future universe?
No, it's current. It is our current. Basically, yeah, no, you're right about that. Like, they've got a lot of cloaking technology. They are constantly editing out whatever humans have discovered. So, yeah.
Okay, so behind the scenes, sort of hidden aliens. Now, do you interact with the culture on Earth, or do you keep it away?
Oh yeah, there's Earth. The series starts on Earth. My main characters were born and raised on Earth. Some of them. There's a few aliens that weren't, but yeah, the Torth themselves, they have all kinds of political issues with Earth. Some of them want to keep it preserved. Some of them want to enslave it, and that's an ongoing point of tension in the story.
So, since you mentioned the characters, what can you tell us about them? Is it one POV for a main character? Is it an ensemble cast?
Multiple. Yeah, it's an ensemble cast. Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of those characters?
Yeah. Well, Thomas is one of the main characters. He is a disabled telepathic super genius. I like weird characters, basically. So, he's very, very cynical. He grew up in a foster care situation on Earth, unaware of the Torth, which he is a Torth. When he gets introduced to the Torth Empire, he fully becomes one of them, and he's fully on board with them. And then he ends up switching sides, and getting away from them is the entire plot of book 1. It's really hard to escape the Torth, basically. They know everything. They know all your secrets. They're the ultimate spies. They can control everyone. So basically, escaping from them is very rare.
So do you go into the nature of his injury, or is that just, it's just there, incidental and moving on?
Oh, no. He has a form of spinal muscular atrophy. So neuromuscular disease. It is actually bioengineered, baked into super geniuses. It's a mutation. The Torth have all kinds of mutations, which they manage through baby farms. It's kind of like a eugenics program that they have.
Okay.
So yeah, so he is a super genius. All super geniuses are supposed to obey certain laws, and they have to die by the age of 15. So because they're considered dangerous, because basically they just sit around soaking up information.
So why do they keep them around at all and not just breed them out if you've got eugenics?
Because they're really useful. They do a lot of innovation. They solve a lot of the problems that the society has. They're kind of like a brain trust. So yeah, I mean they're politically useful too. So a lot of them are controlled, and they will do things for the majority. The majority will like kind of give them orders. In the Torth Empire, the majority rules everyone. So if the majority of Torth want something, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to invent a better type of beverage or something," you know, in return, we'll upgrade your living quarters and give you more slaves. What do you think of that?
So pure democracy. The Greeks would hate you.
Yep.
Okay. So how do you go about transitioning from, because we're linking to the whole series, and we're going to talk largely, how do you expand past Earth? Is that something that they maintain the secrecy of, or do you have the grand reveal that aliens are real?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's chapter 12 in book 1 that the rest of the universe is revealed, so it happens pretty quickly.
Cool.
Yep.
Was that something you intended to do from the outset, to have the reveal happen, or did you at some point plan to keeping it secret?
Yeah, I mean, I originally wanted to like go into this long intro where you got to know these people on Earth before doing it, but I rewrote it like 800 times, and I think the shorter reveal is better because it's such a whiplash. It's a whiplash moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the other? You've got the one Torth guy that has all the superpowers. Can you tell us about him? The one that was on the cover with him?
Yeah, so that's another. There's some weird stuff going on. So another thing you've got to know is there are oracles, there are prophets. They have a power to foresee the future, and they have been outlawed by the Torth Empire. However, an ancient oracle predicted the way to destroy the Torth Empire and started to influence events from the distant past, basically, because through like art and writing and through manipulating followers. And so they had disciples and so forth. And this Titan character is the culmination of the prophecy, basically. So he's like a messiah that was predicted and preordained, but on purpose. His entire life was like manipulated into place, basically. Yeah.
No pressure, though.
Right. He's under a lot of pressure. That's a lot of fun.
So what level of tech, obviously you've got some form of space travel because you show them doing that. What level of technology do you have? Is it like we're talking warp drive kind of thing?
So yeah, there's wormholes in the universe that were created by ancient aliens. The Torth Empire rules the galaxy. They rule the known universe, and they stole all their technology from other alien civilizations. So whatever the aliens had at the time of their conquest is what the Torth now have. So they have a lot of technology. However, they're not very innovative. They are kind of regressive. They're the Torth society because it is a democracy. What people want, they get. And there's certain things they don't want. They don't want artificial intelligence because that might become competitive to real people. They don't want what else? Like there's a list of things they're not on board with, basically. They don't want superluminal travel. So they use the wormholes, but they don't want superluminal travel because they don't want anyone escaping to another galaxy. They don't want anyone able to start a new empire or a rival empire. So they have all kinds of laws in place for that. Yeah.
Okay. No, superluminal. I've heard that word before, and it's drawing a blank. TBI brain moment. Can you?
FTL, faster than light. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes the head injury comes back and gets me, and I forget my words. So, obviously you put these characters through a lot of dark and twisted scenarios. If you ended up meeting them in a dark alley and they knew that you were Abby Goldsmith, the creator of their torment, are you coming out of this one alive?
Probably. Well, it's iffy. Yeah, it's like I think they would understand why I did it, but if they didn't, they would definitely kill me.
That's fair. That's fair. Do you included torture, which is you mentioned in the description, and that is something some authors have come back to say they regretted it. I'm pretty sure it was Diana Gabaldon with her Outlander series has said that maybe she would have toned that down if she was redoing it, but the story is what the story is. Is that something you thought was integral to the plot that you still are glad is in there, or if you had it to do over, do you think you'd have pulled that section?
I think I actually would have toned it down, and I already did. I toned it down in the first place, but I think I should have toned it down more. Yeah, and I honestly found that out the hard way when I was serializing on a Royal Road. A lot of the readers there were they were like, this is really dark. The series author hates the main characters, and some of them were really reacting to it. So like,
it's good that they get passionate though. So, you take the wins where you can get them. Yeah. So when you got picked up by Podium, did they pick the narrator for you, or did you get to pick?
They gave me 3 choices. So I picked from the 3.
Yeah. Were all of them good? I know when I dealt with them, I liked all of them so much that I just let the publisher who published the actual ebooks decide, because I'm like, I like them all. Did you have that problem too?
It was a hard decision, but they were kind enough to do like a little an excerpt to read an excerpt from my books, so I could see how they would do the voices. And yeah, I thought the one they chose was the best choice. Yep.
Good. So with these series, now that it's obviously done, and you've got a nice closing arc coming out in May on the main 6-book trilogy, well, not really trilogy, 6-book arc. Would you live in the world at any point in time, or are you sticking with Earth as we know it?
Freedom Land, after they've destroyed the Torth Empire, not such a bad place to live. I'd probably enjoy it there.
Okay.
But not beforehand.
So you want that plot armor to keep you safe.
Yes.
So obviously, if you gave kind of Dune as a comparison, does most of this happen on planets, or are you gauging in these fights in spaceship to spaceship? What would you say as far as setting? I know some people prefer one versus the other. I like them both.
Yeah, honestly, I've always thought spaceship battles were a little, to me, planets are the resource. That's what you want. That's where people live. That's where all the stuff comes from. So I would think that those are the valuable things that you're fighting over. So most of it does take place on planet. A lot of the fighting takes place on planet. There is a little bit of spaceship battle going on as well. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything that I didn't ask? Because we want to get at no spoilers in the story like this. It's really hard to ask the right questions, because I read all of the blurbs of all 6 of the books, and I'm trying to ask questions that illuminate the story without giving spoilers, and that can be difficult on a story like this. I had the same problem. Your book reminds me of Chris, what's his Rockio's book, and he did one that was also very Dune-esque, and I had the same problem with him. It's like you want him to sell the series to the author or to the readers, but you don't want to give spoilers and ruin anything, So it's always a delicate balance.
Yeah, and that's why I always end up talking the most about book 1, because that's
right
right away. But I always feel a little bad, because I feel like book 1 is the weakest of the series. I mean, I rewrote it so many times, and I was trying so hard with it. And I still think it's a good one, but I'll just say the series gets better.
And if you really like book 1, that's saying something. So
yeah.
Obviously, if this series is done, presumably you've gotten faster at your process, so it's not another 10 years before your next series comes out. So have you already started working on the next project then?
I have. I'm on it now. Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on epic fantasy this time.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like hard magic systems, so I'm a system builder. So yeah, this one's got kind of mathematical magic going on, and the main character is a self-made wizard who is inventing his own magic system, which is kind of accidentally undermining the magical empire that's invading his continent.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's a lot of it's gonna be epic as well.
You like empires as the bad guy.
I do.
Is that inspired by Dune and like Star Wars? Because that's a kind of overarching theme.
Yeah, and Wheel Time and all of them. I mean, Game of Thrones, like, yeah. I like really, it's like your hero is only as powerful as your villain. So you've got to make a super overpowered villain, in my opinion.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the flaws if you talk about ancient history, because I'm classically trained historian, was Hannibal really that bad, or was Rome just selling it over bad? Because if you beat a nobody, you don't get the honors, but if you beat a bad person, suddenly the triumph marches are a lot better. And so you are right. The value of your conquest is directly tied to the threat level of the opponent.
Exactly, and yeah, and I'll just say, like, because I would like to keep talking about the Torth series.
Oh, absolutely. I was about to pivot back.
Yeah, I've got some really fun villains in the Torth universe. So they are a collective where it's the majority rules. However, there are elected officials in the Torth Empire who are really great at obeying the majority, aka leading the majority, basically. So manipulating the masses.
So when you say hive mind, are we talking Borg level where they actually have machines built into them, or more just the shared consciousness allows it to happen? Are there like physical adaptations made to the body, like where machines are implanted kind of thing?
No, it's all mental, 100%. However, they really literally can peer through each other's eyes, listen through each other's ears. There's no privacy at all. So with that level of invasiveness, they've outlawed strong emotions because those are offensive. And they've outlawed all kinds of other things. So even though it's not quite Borg-like, it is basically there's people kind of erase themselves. They erase their individuality because they are afraid to go against the majority opinion.
So if everyone's afraid to go against the majority, are we talking then that you're dealing with when it comes to reproduction, like we're just basically, cloning vets and artificial wombs, or because you've essentially otherwise turned reproduction into a group activity?
Yeah, it's artificial vats and wombs and cloning. Yep, you got it.
So then, because you try to like the fun thing about science fiction and fantasy is the Socratic method of if this then that, if that then what,
right?
And playing that forward and seeing what that looks like. That's the fun of world building. That's why role-playing games are so fun. That's why a well-written story is so enjoyable, because you can kind of ask those next level questions. So with that said, would it be safe to assume then that this collective species that is now artificially creating life because reasons is also attempting to genetically engineer which life gets to get passed on to the next generation?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I mean, they fully practice slavery. They have enslaved all of the alien species they've conquered that aren't telepathic. So anyone that's not a telepath is a slave. And those slaves are controlled to such a degree and bred to such a degree that they have lost a lot of they've lost almost everything, basically. Yeah.
So is there, at the end of the conquest of the series, does that redemption arc let them rediscover themselves, or is that left hanging for future books?
Oh yeah, no, there's like a full-on renaissance by the end. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, the ex-slaves, the former slaves are able to reclaim quite a lot. But yeah, the only way to do that is to destroy the Torth Empire.
So with that empire shattered, you've almost created the cycle of empires where you've got the void, everyone does their own thing, and then somebody unifies it again for the cycle to continue. Is that something you plan on doing? Revisiting that well, like Star Wars did?
That would be the sequel series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the Torth defeated, are there any other big players in there that have that level of control in our galaxy?
Yeah, well, so there's these bioengineered super beings, like the Messiah character there, Ariok. He's a Titan with like crazy amount of power. And he's not the only one. There are other the Torth Empire has all kinds of bioengineered powers that have been outlawed. They don't allow any individual to become too powerful for obvious reasons. But once the Torth are destroyed, well, now it's totally okay to collect as much power as possible. So bioengineering people with superpowers is in full swing by the end.
So one of the things that some authors will do to show how bleak the bad guy empire is they're basically eating paste that has all the nutrients that you need, but none of the enjoyment. Is that somewhere you went with this series, or do you let them enjoy real food?
So the Torth themselves live pretty well. They enjoy all kinds of feasts and like nectar drinks and all kinds of nice things. The slaves more or less get leftovers or paste. So yeah. I know what you mean though. I remember the House of the Scorpion King. She had them eating plankton burgers. Yeah, that was funny.
That is an interesting choice, but for me, I hear plankton and my mind goes to SpongeBob because I have kids of the right age. So, for the universe, is there any plans to tell parallel stories to this novel series? Because obviously you've talked about prequels and sequels, but there are obviously other stories happening parallel to these characters' conquest, either from the opposing side or just outside the sphere. Is that something you intend to visit?
Well, honestly, in the series itself, I do have one-off point of view scene chapters where,
Okay.
yeah, so you like, and a lot of the readers really love those. Like those were pretty popular, and I think they work well because you do get like an outside perspective of what these crazy, powerful main characters are doing. The main characters are very like they're the ones who are ruling these galactic empires and clashing with each other. But your average alien doesn't have any control over any of this, or your average Torth soldier. They just want to survive the next day. So I like doing these one-off point of views.
Do you? I don't know if de-radicalize is the right word. So at a certain point in time, like the empire of Torth is gone. Does that require the destruction of every member, or are you able to repersonify the former mind slaves? Like how do you handle that? Is that something you left up in the air?
Oh no, that is like the heart of the series. I mean, that's there's a ton of like controversy about how to handle them. Like one of the main characters all have advisors, and there's some side characters. And anyway, so one of them wants to genocide the Torth, and that gets a lot of steam. And of course, there's tons of former slaves that are totally on board with genociding the Torth. They're like, yeah, we've had it with them. And then I have one of my main characters. He is a Torth, and he's advocating for saving them, basically saying, no, it's the Empire that's bad, but the Torth people are fine, and they should be given a chance.
You're reminding me of the way you described how they've been indoctrinated. There's a book called A Long Way Gone. It's by Ishmael Bahane. I'm probably butchering his last name, but he was one of the Sierra Leone's boy soldiers for when they had their conflict in the 90s. And that's one of the things that book dives into is like when you've got someone who's been radicalized a certain way that almost makes them not a person, like how do you turn that back is a huge ordeal. And so, you could have taken the easy way out and just killed them all and no mess, no fuss. But it sounds like there's a lot of meat on the bone if you try to give them their humanity back. Well, their Torthness, I guess, back without the slavery part.
Well, it is their humanity. Yeah, like they have to be basically. It's called converting them into humans. So
Okay.
yeah, they have to be redeemed, and you have to have former slaves able to live with them and accept them into society, which is no easy feat at all because the former slaves absolutely hate them.
So when you are writing this, I could see from a author perspective and a plot point, I could see value in a plot arc that eliminates all of them or a redemption arc. Was that something you struggled with, or did you know from the get what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I knew from the get I wanted to make it a redemption arc. Yeah.
Is there any reason that appealed to you over the other?
Yeah, I mean, I really like, I guess I like morally gray. I like to dig into the reasons why there's hatred. Um, most people do, I guess, but I like to really do a deep dive into it. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could say, like, so I'm Jewish American. I grew up
Okay.
hearing stories of the Holocaust. And so it's like, well, yeah, like, what if Nazis and Jews just had to get along after that? There wasn't a state of Israel. They just have to all stay in the same universe or the same city or whatever it is. Like, how do people get to normal? Well, the same thing with like slavery in America, which I've read a lot about as well. Anything like that, where it's like you've got two groups of people where there's been a genocide or like mass slavery or something. It's like, okay, like, how do you heal those wounds, generational trauma and all that?
So what kind of stuff did you do, and stuff being a relative word, but what kind of preparation when you were writing this novel did you do for research to give you that kind of vibe? Because I would imagine your preparation for your background stuff would be very eclectic, just given the scope of what you've written.
I just read a lot of history.
So there's no one specific thing that got you going as far as your plotting that you relied on?
I wouldn't say one specific thing. No, but I mean, definitely like some things kind of stand out in my mind as having more influence. Yeah.
Okay. When you were describing like what happens afterwards, I kept going back to like when I was in, I want to say the 7th or 8th grade, we read a book called The Wave, which is a young adult novel by Todd Struthers, I think, Strasser, something like that. And that was the premise is they had a bunch of middle school kids and they said, well, the Holocaust could never happen because we'd have just stood up to him. And like, they don't understand the psychological angle. So he starts slowly militarizing the room until all the kids that were picked on suddenly have all the power. And you essentially created what was the Hitler Youth, but they don't know it. And their logo is the wave because a drop of water is powerless, but together they can move mountains. And then, of course, it gets out of hand. It's based on, my understanding is a true experiment that happened in California, which was kind of highly unethical because you can't experiment on people without their consent, or at least you're not supposed to. And then they do the big reveal is, we're going to go national and this is our new president or whatever. And then they do the reveal and they drop a picture of Hitler. But when you see that, they deal with that in the aftermath is what happens next. A lot of authors shy away from that because it can be a morally gray area. Did you ever consider shying away from that, or did you just lean in full steam ahead?
I'm crazy like that. Yeah. Like
I might have avoided it just to keep it simple on the plot. I'm not going to lie.
You're smart. Yeah. Like I've realized that, it's like, I'm doing it again with my next series too. My next series
you're glutton for punishment.
Yeah, like I am. Like I feel like when I'm writing, I have something to say. Like I'm writing because I want to communicate something kind of deep. Or I'm writing for a reason, like not to just like retell a story that I've seen. So yeah, I am a glutton for punishment. Yep. I'm like describing my next series as late stage wizardry and magically fueled gender wars. So make of that what you will.
Are you going to be doing that one on, if people want to check it out are you going to go to Royal Road again?
Yeah, right now I'm serializing it on my Patreon, but I'm going to launch it on Royal Road once I'm at a point where I feel like it's ready.
All right, so I will link to her Patreon, dear listener, in the show notes so you can subscribe and read it as it goes if you don't want to wait. I will link to The Wave, the Wikipedia for it, so you can skim it, and if you want to check the book out, you can. Is there anything else that we didn't go into that you feel like they need to know about the Torth universe?
It's Torth. Sorry. I've had like people call it Troth, Thoth, all kinds of different things. So I always think it's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've covered pretty much everything of importance. Yeah. There's a lot
I think for me, at least, Thoth, if you add an H, it's a Thoth, is an Egyptian god. And the series I'm writing has ancient Egypt gods in it. Like it's a middle fantasy, like if the gods were real kind of thing. So and that's partly me, partly I'm hard of hearing. But yeah, I could see how that word could trip some people up if they read too quickly.
Yeah, fair enough. And it never occurred to me that would happen. So I was like, oh, it's a perfect name for the series because it's only 5 letters.
Absolutely. So how did you come up with that name? Before we wrap this up, like, because that's an interesting word. It's easy to pronounce, but it's not a word I've heard before. So in that respect, you did good.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wanted something that sounded kind of evil.
Okay.
Like, yeah. And easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, a word that's easy to remember, easily pronounceable. I was a little wrong about that, I guess. but yeah, like I wanted it because it's a word that's used a lot in the series. Like it's there's the Torth people, there's the Torth government, there's the Torth way of doing things. Like it's like Nazis basically.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I'm picking that up. If the problem is with the Torth that they can communicate telepathically. Is it possible in your, like, obviously you know the world, we don't want spoilers about what you're going to do, so this is just theoretical. Can their culture exist and save the people that were Torth and still keep the mind telepathy, or do you think that is the root cause and must be destroyed?
That's a question that's tackled in book 6.
Oh, okay, so they don't answer that because I don't want to give spoilers. It's just one of those fun thought questions of, could it exist without that, right? Like,
yeah. Well, it is. It's a heavy question because you're right. Like, and it kind of ties right into, because I wrote this series during the rise of social media. And so like, there's a lot of questions. Social media is basically the megacosm, which is the Torth mind language.
I can see that. But I'm of the age where I think I had a MySpace in high school and that's about it. And Tom was my first friend, but then I never really did anything with it. I didn't even really get on Facebook till I started writing. So it is like the Wild West trying to figure out what that means for society to be this connected. So I could see a parallel, and I didn't catch it when I read the description, but now that you say that, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think to me the parallels are really inescapable, and like I did partially write it with I revised the entire outline as I was writing it with that in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least it ends hopefully, because that, if you went all doom and gloom with your prediction, I'd be a little concerned.
Yeah, it ends hopefully, but yes, I will say that it's not all solved at the end, and there could be a sequel series where I delve into that more deeply. But it's like, you're right though. Like if everyone can communicate instantly, and if people are having trouble keeping secrets, does that automatically lead to kind of like, I guess you might call fascism, collectivist fascism or something? Like, is that what that always inevitably leads to? That's a good question.
And then when you start trying to control the emotions, that gets weird too, because once you shut off your emotions, you essentially become a sociopath.
Exactly. I read a lot about cults as well, and a lot of, right, of course. But a lot of cults are all about like controlling the followers. So telling them who to marry, how to dress, what to eat, what they can wear, what they can think. And so that's a heavy part of this kind of like, I guess, groupthink, like that's what it's leading to.
And it can get out of hand. Like Terry Mixon has talked about it on his podcast. He does one of those for author podcasts. And one of the pulp sci-fi, they did that. They had robots to help keep the peace. And it told the robots programming was they wanted everyone to be happy, which meant anytime someone cried, they killed them. Because if they're not there, then everyone else is happy. And then you kind of create a death spiral of good intentions. And I could see where what you created could cause that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I book 4, I go do a deep dive into how the Torth arose. It's like a 3-chapter long kind of like insight into how they came about, and I might go more into that if I ever write the prequel series. But basically, yeah, like the ancient Torth, the original ones, had great intentions. They just wanted like equality and unity for all. So
when you write, are you like, I dictate, so there's no background noise, right? That just wouldn't work. I know people that they type, and so they listen to music. There's a soundtrack of their novels. Is that something you do? Like, do you have that you could be like, oh, when I wrote this novel, I was listening to this, and the reader could pair it if they wanted to, kind of thing?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I wrote it over like 10 plus years.
So probably not. But...
Yeah. Yeah. There's no soundtrack, but I mean, I listen to a lot of like orchestral music.
Okay.
So movie soundtracks, some of the great composers that we have today, like Thomas Bergerson, Joe Blankenberg, and Glenn Gabriel. So there's a few composers I like.
Okay. So this is the part of the interview as we wind it down, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part. And with that said, Abby, how can listeners and readers find you if they want to check you out? And obviously, I will link to all of this in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks. I'm easy to find, ABBY, that's Abby Goldsmith, Goldsmith. If you just Google my name, it's abbygoldsmith.com. Abby Goldsmith at Gmail, so forth. So easy to
I'm
get.
sensing a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the names, like, obviously, if you trace a surname back far enough, it generally is related to a job or a location. At least yours is easy, and I can spell it. At some point in time, you had a Goldsmith in the family. I know I'm going out on a limb.
Most likely, yeah. Lost in the history of time or whatever. But yeah.
Okay, and then the Patreon, is that something that you update regularly that someone can join if they want to do that now? Because we did mention that.
Yeah, I update it every Sunday.
Okay, and so they could catch now. Obviously, this is going to air the end of February. So if they joined you now, they could start reading the fantasy novels as well?
Yes, I will warn you that's the first draft. So,
okay.
So it's probably going to be subject to some big change. But yeah, it's there.
All right, and on your website, do you have a newsletter if people wanted to sign up for that? Is that something that's available?
I do, yeah. abbygoldsmith.com/subscribe.
All right, perfect. All of that will be linked in the show notes, dear listener. And this is the part where I remind you, you can follow us on our link tree at linktr.ee linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, linktree /Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, maybe the Spotify, the Twitter. We've got our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Send the shenanigans to Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the emails. You can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, people. If you use the link in the show notes, Podcast Grunts is the code. You get 10% off. We get a kickback. You shop local. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my absentee and crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. All right, thanks for coming on, Abby. This was fun. We'll have to have you back for some panels. It's definitely, you're not a shy person, and I like that in a guest. So
yeah, thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to hit the end button. Don't cut